Farm Food Facts, where every farmer, every acre, and every voice matter. Boy, do we have a special guest today. I first met this guy years ago, one of the smartest people in the food world, in the ag world. Dr. Robb Fraley is with us. He won the 2013 World Food Prize for breakthrough achievements in founding, developing, and applying modern agriculture biotechnology, and he's won just about every award that you can imagine. Robb, thanks so much for joining us today on Farm Food Facts.
Well, Phil, it's great to connect again. Looking forward to our conversation.
Me too. And I have to start off asking from a science standpoint, from one of the world leaders standpoint, how serious is COVID-19 as it relates to agriculture production?
Well, I think it does two things. First of all, it tells us how important agriculture is, and it also points out some key challenges. I think the bright spot is during this crisis we've generally had food in our grocery stores and availability, and I think it really points out really clearly how important it is to have domestic production and a safe and adequate food supply. On the other hand, it's clearly pointing out some areas where we can make improvements and where we're testing some of the vulnerabilities in the system.
So talk to me about some of those vulnerabilities. And, we keep on hearing, for example, John Tyson's ad, that the food system is breaking and so on. Is it to that extreme? Should consumers, should farmers be nervous?
I don't think so. My belief is that, and first of all, I'd like to just say how much I appreciate and applaud, the work of everybody, not only in the healthcare but in the food chain. I mean, everybody from the farmers to those involved in processing and transportation to the grocery stores and restaurants. I mean, it's been a heroic effort. While we're talking here, our farmers are putting crops in the ground, and food's being delivered all across the country, and that is so key. But when I think about some of the concerns that top of mind, obviously labor on the farm is being challenged, labor in processing plants by some of the COVID implications, and that's the key. And one of the things that I think that's going to create is a much stronger focus on both farm automation and robotics as we go forward. I think it also is clear that folks involved in food production need all of the PPE and protective gear that's possible, and that's something I think everyone is aware of, and we'll see dramatic improvements there. So, I'm confident that the system will hold together, and a big part of that is really the, heroic effort of everyone involved in the ag and food chain.
So let's drill really down into DNA. What have we been able to learn about COVID-19 through DNA? And are there going to be any learnings to protect against it?
Well, I had a chance a few weeks ago to write an article that I, put on my LinkedIn account at Robb Fraley, and commented, and I'm really in awe of the tremendous progress that scientists around the world have made to understanding COVID-19. A couple of key points. Within a few weeks of the outbreak in China, scientists had already sequenced the genome of the virus and made that information available. And that immediately allowed us to understand what some of the changes were that enabled the virus to spread so quickly. It gave us insights into the capsid protein that binds to the human cell receptor, and that created a lot of information. I think that'll ultimately be valuable as we create both drug treatments and vaccines for the future. Having that sequence information gave us the ability to do rapid testing, really very sophisticated, nucleotide testing that gave us very accurate information, and ultimately it's going to lead us the way to creating vaccines and other treatments to offset the impact of this virus.
So to that point, is injecting antibodies into people who have recovered from it a way of finding out more about this and really keeping it under control?
Yeah, using antibodies has traditionally been an approach. That's been used for Ebola and a number of other viral diseases. Of course, it's predicated on the fact that and the hope that those antibodies, are reactive and create an immunity to that virus. But also, we have a number of biotech companies that are creating antibodies in the laboratory, literally, using the power of biotechnology and computer analysis to create and scan and test literally thousands of humanized antibodies, which would allow for large scale production and injection of those antibodies into people. So I think there will be a number of both treatments possible, based on antibody, based on the development and design of new drugs, and ultimately what everyone's hoping for is the creation of vaccines. And there again, we're seeing multiple approaches. The last time I looked, I think across the globe, there were over 100 different vaccines in development using lots of new and sophisticated biotechnology methods to create vaccines that are reactive to only portions of the virus and create the opportunity for many different approaches. And that's going to be obviously so key to managing this pandemic for the future.
I also saw, I believe it's at Oxford in the UK. There's a scientist such as yourself who's working on it, who's already injected, I think he said over 5,000 people with the antibody so that, come early June, he's going to know whether or not that worked.
Yeah, there's lots of testing going on around the globe, and that's going to be key to find out exactly which antibodies have the capacity to neutralize the virus.
One of the topics that I know is near and dear to your heart is gene editing. What role, if any, does gene editing have in controlling or eliminating this virus?
Well, gene editing is a pretty new technology, and a lot of people have probably heard or heard mentioned technologies like Talons or CRISPR. These are advanced biotechnology tools that allow for very, very precise and specific changes in a gene, and they give us tools both to precisely change the virus to be able to understand, the key components of the virus and its interaction with the human cells. And it also, in theory, gives us the potential to use gene editing to, create immunity in people. And here's an area where, particularly in animal health care, gene editing has already been used in both chickens and pigs to alter the virus receptor interaction and create immunity. Now, obviously, that's a long way off, but I think, from the point of view of having new key research tools that give us incredible insights to dissect the biology and the interaction of the virus and its processing in cells, these are going to be very powerful tools that are going to speed up the response to managing the pandemic.
So when we look at gene editing, basically, as I understand, and certainly I'm not a scientist, but basically it's going in to that DNA, whether it's a human being or to the virus, and turning certain elements off or on. Am I correct?
Yeah, basically, I think of it like an editor in one of your word processors, where you can go in and literally change a letter or a vowel or a consonant. here you can change a specific nucleotide with these tools, and what you're doing is you're changing the nucleotide in an existing gene. And so, in many ways, it's like a very targeted and very precise mutation, and it works very efficiently, very effectively, and allows us to generate thousands of changes to really understand, how the virus works, how it infects cells, and perhaps ultimately how we can mitigate those effects in people.
So, because of technology, and being in 2020 versus in 1950, it's possible that it's not the cure for it or immunity to it is not going to be an injection or a pill. It could actually be, manipulating the genes in our body to fight these viruses.
Well, like I said, that's a long way off, but I think it's clear that gene editing is going to give us the tools and insights to make progress. And what I expect is we're going to see progress on all these fronts. We'll see treatments that are effective. We're going to see vaccines, and we're going to learn a lot that will enable us to be better prepared, for the future.
So, is there any good news coming out of COVID-19? What are some positive changes that you see taking place as a result of this?
Well, a couple of things come to mind for me. So, first of all, despite all of the pressure we've seen in our healthcare system, you know, you know, all of those, the doctors, the nurses, the first responders have really worked together, and we've netted together a nationwide approach, and the public has responded, and we've asked people to do social distancing, and we've certainly been able to flatten the curve. I've commented that I think it really points to the vital importance of agriculture and food production in this country. We've had a healthcare crisis. We really haven't had a food security crisis, and that's so important, I think. And I hope one of the things that comes out of this is that people see how the scientific community has come together across the board of topics that we've just talked about, the detection technologies and the assays, the development of treatments and cures for the future. For me, it's been a remarkable set of scientific advances that are underway, and it's one of the reasons I'm so confident that we can address the pandemic. I also think it really points long term to the investment in public and private research, because the tools that are being used have been developed in just the last few years and have multiple applications, not only across healthcare, but across agriculture. And many of these same tools that we've just talked about are being used to breed better crops, to create crops that are more resistant to insects and diseases, more resistant to drought and environmental challenges. And so I think it really helps us not only to ensure an adequate and safe and nutritious food supply, but these new tools are letting us farm better, farm more efficiently, which is good for the environment, good for the planet. And so I hope that the role that science plays, it becomes better understood, and the importance of these innovations, to the broad public, is realized.
So, last question: what would you hope and what would you like to say to all the American farmers and ranchers that are watching and listening to this?
Well, first of all, I would say a big thank you. They've made lots of sacrifices. They've continued to ensure that we have a safe and adequate food supply, despite a lot of challenges. These are difficult times. We're seeing changes in commodity prices, in fuel price that impacts biofuels and other important elements of the farming system. The challenges in food and meat processing are really testing the system. I know that they'll do their job, and we can count on them. I think, as I said earlier, we've seen where some of the weaknesses are, and people will move very quickly to remedy that. And from a science perspective, I see lots of innovations, both the advances in biology and biotechnology, but also the digital tools that will allow us to monitor and create better on-farm decisions for the future. So I'm confident that we have a bright future ahead as we see these new tools reach farmers both in this country and around the world.
Dr. Robb Fraley, thank you again for joining us today on Farm Food Facts.
Phil, good to connect and keep up the good work. Thank you.
Thanks. Thanks for listening to today's podcast episode. For more information on all things food and agriculture, please visit us at usfarmersandranchers.org. Also, be sure to look for us on Facebook at US Farmers and Ranchers or on Twitter at USFRA. Until next time.